Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Quorum Productions with my co-host Stacie, here to talk about the original Quantum Leap, Season 3, Episode 15, Piano Man. The episode's description reads as follows. Sam is a piano player who is on the run from a killer with an ex-girlfriend. The episode was written by Ed Scarlack. This is his one and only effort on the series. He has 48 writing credits in total, a lot of classic television shows, and his last few credits were on different Scooby-Doo animated projects. The episode was directed by James Whitmore Jr., last responsible for 8.5 months, which he also guest starred in. The episode takes place on November 10th, 1985, and according to Internet Movie Database, this is the second latest into the timeline that any show actually is. The first was The Revenge of the Evil Leaper. That'd be the last Evil Leaper episode. So that's according to Internet Movie Database. And the episode originally aired on March 27th, 1991. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple of things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast. If you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out, and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening to one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please follow. And feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Quorum Productions, where additional content can be discovered, both Quantum Leap related and otherwise. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, and subscribe to our channel. Alright, so shout-outs this week. We're going to start with a sad one. It seems like every other week, or every week
Every week lately, yeah.
Somebody is dying.
Right.
In this case, it's legendary Bob Barker. He was, of course, the host of The Price is Right. So he recently passed away over the weekend at the age of 99.
Yeah, he was, I think, about 3 months from his 100th birthday.
Well, that's kind of like, it reminds me a little bit of Betty White.
Betty White was, I think, 17 days.
Yeah, that really
So,
is.
She won.
Mm-hmm.
She made it a little bit longer.
Yeah. But I remember being angry about that. I'm like, come on, you couldn't have given her 17 more days just to get her to 100 years old. I mean, come on. All right. Also, shout-outs for Mark Davidson, Alpa, and Big Guy 17, who all say they loved Private Dancer. In fact, a couple of them list that as one of their favorite episodes. And I think I saw someone else on Facebook say that was one of their favorite episodes as well. And a couple of people, like Alpha, mentions that they have love for Piano Man as well.
Yeah. I hope we're not too disappointing with what we have to say about it.
I mean, in Alpha's case, he specifically mentions that he has a preference for the episodes that occur within his lifetime. Mm-hmm. And this episode actually occurs in our lifetime. Right. One of the few episodes of the original series to do so.
Yeah, I had just turned 3 when this takes place.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Big Guy 617, I forgot to shout him out last week, but he also commented on the Future Boy podcast. He speculated that perhaps Mo Stein ended up helping the Evil Leapers create their project by talking about the string theory on television. Not sure if I buy it, but it's as valid a theory as any. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. I hadn't heard that before.
Alpha says also that he became a fan of Daybreak by Cheryl Lynn because of this episode. Are you familiar with that song?
I'm not.
Okay. And he suggested that Diana may have let Sam get away with some extra stuff that I was, a little uncomfortable with last week because there's different rules for people who are more attractive. And, I tend to sort of agree with that in that attractive people definitely tend to get away with more stuff than us ugly people. Or I should say, us average-looking people. Ashley Wright pointed out that Death Wish, starring Charles Bronson, was near Central Park, where Sam was walking by in the 70s. That film was in 1974. Sam missed it by about 5 years. He also made a reference that I didn't initially understand. He said something about the Warriors being chased by baseball furries, and my initial reaction to that is, well, I don't really know anything about furries, but I then looked into that reference and found a movie called The Warriors in 1979 that does indeed take place in the same spot that Sam was in.
Yeah, I think what that boils down to is anything that takes place in New York and needs a green space is happening in Central Park. Pretty much. Which, I mean, I think he may not be as familiar with how iconic Central Park is. And,
of course.
It's referenced in, lots and lots and lots and lots of media, including other episodes of Quantum Leap.
Yes, indeed.
I know we had mentioned last week, Blind Faith has a Central Park scene.
Yes, that's right.
Which is the last time...
I believe he actually referenced that as well in his comments.
It's the last time that, it's when we learned Sam knows how to play the piano, which they didn't tell us that again this time. We just picked it up where he knows what he's doing, and we understand that he is an accomplished musician and is capable of reading sheet music a little too well, if you ask me.
Well, what's interesting about that is, and I think this was probably a favor to Scott Bakula's as well, because it gave him a chance to
perform.
Yeah, use his musical talents.
Yeah.
And all the original songs in this episode were performed by Scott Bakula in this episode.
Well, there's just one original song, I think.
Was there? I thought there was another one.
I'm pretty sure it's just one original. And then they did Footloose.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but they released the song from this show, which I have that listed as, the thing that I liked most about this episode was I do love that song, Somewhere in the Night. And it's a beautiful song, and they released it as a single, Quantum Leap did, as well as part of the official show soundtrack.
So before getting into this episode, before we start talking about that, a couple more announcements.
Okay.
I figure I'd bring it up now. We will be doing, barring some major catastrophe, Season 3 trivia next week. We had Stacie's little disaster last week that postponed trivia. We couldn't do it this week because Adam isn't available, but next week we will, barring some major catastrophe, be doing that. We've also had some preliminary discussions about discussing the show based on the book Under the Dome. Those are very preliminary right now. We haven't come up with a format or anything like that. But for those who are regular fans of the channel, that's something you potentially have to look forward to. So beyond that, Stacie, your thoughts on this week's episode?
All right. So as I just said, I like the song. And that's the only thing I got under the I like column. And I expressed this last week when we, were talking about the end of the episode. Not one of my favorites here. It's actually pretty low on the totem pole for me. One reason is just it's a very action-y episode, and I don't like action. I don't know. Do you think it's weird that I find action boring?
No, I think that's a very valid taste.
I literally fall asleep if I watch an action movie. Like the long scenes of just chasing and shooting without much dialogue. I can't follow it. I need the dialogue. I need a story. And if you have an action scene that lasts longer than 2 minutes, I can't pay attention to it. I physically can't do it. But on that, it just feels like this episode is too similar to other episodes. I feel like this is kind of like the baby between Her Charm,
yes,
which is the FBI episode.
Off air, I referenced this episode as being a reskinned version of Her Charm.
I feel like it's the baby between that episode, Hunting We Will Go, the bounty hunter episode.
Yeah,
and
that's later this season.
And I didn't write it down. What was the third one that came to my mind?
Permanent Wave, season 4. Because that's what I was thinking.
I hadn't thought of that, but yes, that follows the same format as well.
I think that actually is the better version of this episode.
Yeah. There was another one that came to my mind that I felt like this heavily pulled into. But basically the format where Sam is some dude and he's with some girl who's probably annoying and they're on the run.
Yeah.
And being chased. There's a lot of car scenes, chase car scenes. There's a lot of guns. And specifically Her Charm, that's the same story, right?
Right, basically.
Where no matter what they do, they still get killed because there's some leak of information coming from them. Same story.
Yep, pretty much.
And then a Hunting We Will Go, which is coming up, I think, pretty soon in the season.
A couple episodes.
That one's a little different because in that case, the girl is the one trying to get away from him and he's chasing her. But it's kind of the same overall format, where it's a traveling episode. There's an annoying girl and...
She was kind of hot in that episode, though.
And, we just play through this same type of scenario where it's about a chase. And, you're either running from the bad guys or we are the bad guys or... I don't know. It just all feels very familiar.
See, I like about half of this episode. I'd say about the first 15 minutes are pretty decent. And there was, cute moments here and there. I don't really necessarily like the reskin version of Her Charmed. I tend to, the comedy episodes are fun. The action adventure episodes can be fun depending how it's done. But it's not what I gravitate towards. I'm more of the drama kind of guy. And that's the kind of thing I enjoy talking about more.
More substance.
Yes, it gives me something to actually talk about. Like Private Dancer last week not one of my favorite episodes, but it still gave me some things to talk about. This episode doesn't have the weirdness of Private Dancer, and just kind of sits there. It's just kind of like, all in all, kind of in the lower tier of episodes. Though I wouldn't say it's bad. It's just not my cup of tea more than anything else. And I would get why someone would like this episode. And I get why maybe Scott Bakula would consider this a favorite, if he does indeed, because he gets the chance to do some stuff that he enjoys doing.
He does perform in a lot of episodes, but on that note, I felt like the performances in this felt a little out of place. Trying to combine that heavy, chasey action with, like, oh, let's stop and sing.
Right.
I don't know. It felt a little weird to me.
Yeah, totally. I guess you do have a point there.
Another thing I had noted, just comparing it to other episodes, is we also kind of reuse part of this plot of people using fake names, having changed their names, and Ziggy can't, like, figure this out. We reused that in the new series.
And we found that equally ridiculous.
Yeah,
in that
for the
series.
Bounty Hunter episode.
Yeah.
A Decent Proposal. Which, in my opinion, was much better done.
Yeah.
Than any of these ones we just referred to in the original series.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we might as well just get right into it.
Yeah.
All right, so Sam leaps in at the end of a song that he's performing. He's a lounge lizard in some dive bar. He tries to take a break, but a girl wants him to play a song, and she's kind of hitting on him and flirting with him, and it's the one he wrote. And we keep having this weird cut to this irrelevant guy smoking a cigarette. Or a cigar. We see him a couple of times, and he doesn't factor into the story at all.
Yeah, actually, one of the facts I picked up from alsplace.com is all of that early, like, barroom footage was reused footage from Disco Inferno.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they used stock footage from Disco Inferno to set the bar scene.
Gotcha.
So, you know, the shots that weren't showing that girl, Janelle was her name, or the bartender, who, you know, comes up a little bit later. The ones, you know, just showing the patrons, that was reused footage.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And Sam says, "Oh boy," and credits. I don't need to say that again. I have my trivia note about Scott Bakula performing the original songs in this episode here in my notes, but I already said that, so I don't need to repeat myself, even though I technically just did.
So yeah, when we come back from the credit break, he plays the song that Janelle asked him to sing.
Is it Somewhere in the Night? Is that the title?
Somewhere in the Night is the name they released it under, but here she just called it Somewhere. So he plays the song, and this is where I don't buy it, because he plays the song beautifully, right? And I get that he's like some savant and he's capable of reading the sheet music and just doing it, but you've never heard the song once. You've certainly never played the song. You're not going to play it perfect and perform it beautifully the very first time ever encountering this piece of music.
Not only that, but is that music that's on the sheet? Because
I'm assuming he found the sheet music for it. Okay. Otherwise, he'd have no clue, right?
Right.
And he did have sheet music in front of him, but
was that just the notes, or was there actual words on the sheet?
I assumed it was written out.
Okay.
But I don't care how good you are at playing an instrument. You can't pick up something you've literally never heard and just have this beautiful rendition. I
definitely can't do that, even if I have heard of it.
I feel like you'd stumble on the lyrics a little bit, you know, turning the page. You wouldn't know what to expect. You wouldn't know where the breaks are. And you'd, at the very least, go a little slower than you should. And he doesn't. He does this amazing performance of this song he's never encountered. And again, I love the song, but it just felt a little silly.
Yeah, makes sense. We keep seeing cutting to this woman who's in the crowd, a blonde woman. We don't know the significance of her, but we keep cutting back to her. She's crying. Her name in this episode, by the way, is Lorraine. Is that a Back to the Future reference, do you think?
I don't know that it is, but that sure helped me remember what her name was while I was writing my notes.
There we go. She's played by Marietta De Prima, and she has 20 acting credits, including 2 episodes of Matlock and an episode of Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. That's another crossover talent between Lois and Clark and this series. And after he finishes the song, the drunk girl goes off and gets a drink. Lorraine approaches Sam like they know each other, and she talks about, oh, well, you added lyrics to this song. And she keeps talking to Sam. Sam, of course, is clueless, and he's saying his half of the conversation into the mic. Now, is that thing turned on? Is he, like, broadcasting his end of the conversation to the crowd? because that's a little weird. She knocks something over, which is something of a reoccurring thing that happens.
Yeah,
in this
we got
episode.
her first two clumsy things in this scene, and let me just tell you the whole Lorraine is clumsy, Lorraine is a jinx thing. I didn't find it amusing. It was annoying. It was just really annoying to me that this played like every 5 seconds. Oh, I'm clumsy. Okay, so she stepped on his foot first. And then she knocked it over. It was his tip jar that was on top of the piano. I didn't even know what that was. And it's glass, of course, so it shatters everywhere. So now we're dealing with broken glass all over the floor. Not a great thing. And during this conversation, we found out that, you know, he's been gone for 3 years from her, and she's been looking for him for months, but now she kind of regrets it, and she says this maybe wasn't the best idea. Of course, he still has no idea what is going on. Right.
The drunk girl ends up coming in, and she ends up getting into a fight with Lorraine, saying, hey, look, you know, if you need to shrink, go somewhere else, blah, blah, blah. Sam defuses the bomb and goes to talk to Lorraine at the bar. They go to the bar. The bartender tells them not to worry about, what was this girl's name?
I had it. Janelle.
Janelle. That she gets territorial when she's drunk. Lorraine and Sam start to talk. She ends up knocking over coffee, burning the bartender, continuing that motif of being klutzy. And he says, you know, we can get some skin grafts. It'll be all good. And Lorraine asks why he didn't even say goodbye, which, of course, Sam doesn't have an answer to. We have Al appearing at the 7-minute and 13 mark with a really weird attitude, blaming Sam for this girl crying. It's like, oh, you know, you've been here for 15 seconds and you're already making a girl cry. I'm like, I don't understand what Al's problem is here. Al tells him that his name is Chuck Danner, lounge lizard extraordinaire. And at first I'm like, okay, how do you know that? Like, and how do you know anything about this when you, but it actually, I think that is accounted for. Al mentions that he's talked to the guy in the waiting room.
Right, they do mention the guy in the waiting room says he's Chuck Danner.
And he ran away 3 years ago. Lorraine thinks it was to avoid marrying her. Al has no information on the guy whatsoever. But Lorraine reveals that he changed his name, which is why
she's very helpful that we quickly learn that this character's name has changed. She tells us his real name. We learn his last name first, and then we soon learn his first name, and it's Joey DiNardo is who he actually is.
So she wants closure because she met someone named Carl and is going to marry him, and he wants her to get him out of the system and get
right. It was Carl's idea for her to come find her ex, which is noteworthy. Yes, and also it should have kind of been a red flag because who would do that? Right. Certainly. Would you go to your fiance and be like, "Listen, I know you haven't seen this person in 3 years, but go find them just to make sure you're over them."
Right. Right. I don't know. It's a little.
I can get it if it was 3 months, but 3 years. I don't know.
No, after 3 years, I think feelings have faded. Just a little bit. Al asks, why is she sitting with him at a bar stool if she's in love with this other guy? And she seems to answer him, and I don't even know what motivates her to do so. She's like, good point. What is she responding to?
No, Sam says good point. And she's like, what's a good point?
Are you sure? Because I could have sworn she said good point.
No, Sam responded to Al's good point.
Oh, okay. It was
and of course, then, you know, she picks up like, well, what's a good point? What are you talking about?
Right. Sam asks if she loves him, and why is she there? And of course, we just mentioned that it was Carl's idea. And she wants to know if it's over. Sam's still, and you know, after 3 years of no contact, it's over. But anyway, Sam stumbles for an answer, and Sam suggests that they should talk after his set. Lorraine leads to call Carl. And Sam thinks that he's there to get them back together. Al thinks it's probably the opposite, because of course he has to argue the opposition. Lorraine calls Carl, and who sounds like a typical jealous fiancé, and he insists she return home. And this doesn't quite jive with everything that we see later, this performance of Carl at this point. And he ends up hanging up the phone and blah, blah, blah. Sam plays a song, Lorraine watches, and after the song, Sam manages to get a last name.
Yeah. And Al gives us a line. He says, play it again, Sam. I've always wanted to say that.
Yes, a Casablanca reference. Yeah. Actually, it's kind of weird because I make one in my X-Files video, which will drop tomorrow. But yeah. So yeah, that's actually a reference to both Casablanca and also played against Seymour in this series. So that's interesting.
And yeah, so this is when we got the rest of his name, Joey DiNardo. And Lorraine makes a comment about how if he hadn't left, he'd be recording right now. Apparently he had some recording contract in the works. So it adds some more puzzle to it. Like, well, what happened to this guy that he just like changed his name and ruined his career, right?
Right.
And then the bartender comes up.
Yes, and he asked to borrow his car. And I guess these guys are friends. I didn't realize that before.
Because he wants to take Janelle home.
Right. And I'm sure that's all innocent. Like, no, he just wants to take her home, not to get lucky or anything. And he's definitely not going to get lucky. He's going to be very unlucky.
And Lorraine makes a comment. She's like, you never used to let somebody borrow your car. Like, spoiler alert, Sam's changing history by letting this guy take his car because Joey would not have done this.
And, so the bartender ends up asking Sam, hey, where'd you park your car? And Sam's helpful answer is outside. And, honestly, even if I didn't get leaked into by Sam, that would probably be my response as well. I'm like, outside somewhere, I don't know. Why would you ask me where I parked my car? Because I don't even know. I have to set up.
He doesn't know.
Right.
The bartender's able to find it, but I have a question. How did the killer find his car? How does he know which car is his?
Maybe he just has car bombs set up on everybody's car. I mean, there's no evidence of that, but anyway. So Al enters the name into the hand link and seems surprised when he starts reading about how he died.
Yeah, how he died in a car explosion tonight.
Right. And as he's saying that, we hear a car explosion.
Kaboom!
And I actually kind of love this moment a little bit. I think it's well done. Al reading the information as the car explodes. So they end up rushing outside. This attracts no one else's attention. Like, nobody else from the bar goes out to see what happened.
So Sam goes out, Lorraine goes out, and Al is in tow.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, no one from the establishment goes outside at all.
Right.
And who's running the bar, anyways, if the bartender just left?
Right. Maybe he got replaced, but there's, it's not mentioned or anything like that. And so the bartender and Janelle presumably are dead.
Yeah, they went kaboom. And I don't know. I have some issues here. Okay, so as soon as Al puts the real guy's name in, Joey DiNardo, he instantly finds that Joey DiNardo died in this car explosion today at this bar. Why did he not get that information without his real name? Because the guy is playing at this bar under his assumed name, Chuck. Yeah, Chuck.
Right.
And died.
Under the name of Chuck.
Right.
So you figure you would know that information. Yeah.
Looking for that and this location, should you not have found the fact that somebody dies here tonight?
Right.
The guy that was playing piano? Like, you should have already found that information, regardless if you knew his real identity or not.
I think a car bomb would be, notable news.
Right. Even if you didn't know it was him, you should have known that this event happens tonight. Somebody's going to die in a car explosion. Like, you'd think that would have come up in your initial search.
So Al is like, oh, that bomb was meant for you. No kidding, you don't say.
Yeah.
And then when we come back from commercial, a gunman comes to shoot Sam, and why is he there? You set up a car bomb to blow this guy up.
I mean, he was sticking around to make sure it worked.
I guess.
He was watching from the sidelines and realized it wasn't Joey that went to the car.
And so he ends up taking a shot at Sam. Sam gets shot, and they somehow get away in Lorraine's car because I guess the car explodes more. And it knocks over the would-be assassin, and allowing them to get away. Yeah,
so they're in Lorraine's car, she's driving. And I have a question. In the original history, they were going to be talking, right? So would she have gone to his car with him? Was she supposed to die too? They don't tell us that.
Right.
But
you would figure that she would.
Unless... Yeah, like they were together that night, presumably.
Yep. So in the original history, I would figure that Lorraine also died, but they don't seem too concerned about that. So, as they drive, Al mentions that Sam changed history, that originally Joey was going to die in the car bombing, and he left 3 years ago because he saw someone get whacked. How does he know that exactly?
Right. Another problem I have with Ziggy simultaneously doesn't have enough information and has too much information throughout this episode. Like, you didn't even know who this guy was, but suddenly you know the whole story about this murder he witnessed, but he's not in Witsack.
Right.
Like, he's literally on the run on his own. So this shouldn't be documented anywhere of what's going on. He died that night. So why is there any record of his story?
Right. Yeah, that's a problem. So Rain is so excited that, Sam didn't end up leaving because of her, that she almost gets him killed.
Yeah, she just kind of stops driving and hugs him, and they almost collide with a giant semi-truck.
I don't understand how Lorraine hasn't managed to die already.
Right. Saving her seems like a full-time job, not a single leap.
Yeah.
So yeah, the full story is Joey left 3 years ago. He saw this guy Ponte get killed by Nick Bellini, and the three of them grew up together, so they knew each other very well. And so the reason he ran was to get away from Nick.
Right.
Because he thinks Nick's going to kill him now. And why didn't he join Witsack? Why didn't you go to the police and tell them you saw this murder?
Right.
So not only did you give up your life, but you don't actually have any protection. You're like on your own completely, and you didn't help.
Right.
The guy, like, if you, I don't know, went to the police, maybe they could help you and get this guy arrested, and you left Lorraine behind. Like, why didn't you take her with you?
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of holes.
How do you know she's not just going to get killed by Nikki?
Right. So Al mentions that the guy is only 90 seconds behind, which is 1 minute and 30 seconds, and if you stop the car, that's not a long time. They run out of gas at the 257 marker, which is where he's supposed to die in the new history. Yeah,
so when they pass mile marker 256, Al tells them, well, now they're going to die as soon as they hit 257, which doesn't take long to drive a mile. And as they stop, they run out of gas, and Lorraine goes, not again. So she has a habit of running out of gas.
This person is a disaster.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, even worse than I ever was, honestly.
Yeah, you two might have a lot in common, actually.
Yeah. I don't think a relationship with me and Lorraine would go very well. We would both end up dead within, like, 30 seconds. So they escape by getting the car off the road. In 1 minute and 30 seconds, they manage to do this.
Yeah, the killer just drives on by.
Right. And they manage to get to a diner. We cut to a diner where Sam is talking to the sheriff, explaining how they got out of that
and it's
situation.
morning now, so the whole night has passed, because it was sometime in the evening when they were doing the whole bar scene.
Yeah, it was dark.
So we learned that these two cowboys helped them out, and now Sam's buying the cowboys breakfast, and the sheriff's on his way. He says he's a half hour out. He's going to come to the diner, and then we learn that Joey still carries Lorraine's photo in his wallet.
Isn't that adorable?
Well, I do think it's an important point, because it does give some agency to Joey's point of view, right?
Right.
Because without that, like, that's the only tidbit of information we have that Joey might still care about Lorraine.
Right.
Although he didn't care enough to take her with him.
Right, of course not. He could be dead in a ditch for all he knows. But yeah, so Sam ends up paying for himself, the cowboys that helped him get there, and Lorraine. It was a big special breakfast. And we see the picture. Lorraine smiles and then goes and starts fooling around with the piano, and she wants him to teach the song that he sang at the back of the lounge bar or whatever.
So they play the song somewhere in the night, and again they just call it Somewhere in the episode, even though it was released as Somewhere in the Night. And then for no apparent reason, the diner owners tells them to
can you cut loose?
Yeah, and they play Footloose.
Right.
And again, this feels very like weird.
Well, yeah, it's kind of funny because they don't talk about this at all. Like, they don't even talk about what song they're gonna do, and they're just all of a sudden on the same page as to what song they're gonna do.
And like, there's a killer chasing you,
and we have people
the sheriff's
dancing
on his way,
right.
But we're playing Footloose.
Yeah, we're gonna play Footloose in this bar for this rapt audience while someone's out to kill us. That always puts me in the mood to perform, definitely. So yeah, they are all excited. They clap and they say, "Hey, you two should have an act." And Lorraine gets upset with this and goes outside. Sam ends up explaining, "Yeah, we had an act." She's like, "Well, maybe you should put it back together."
Right.
Sam finds her outside, and Sam insists that everything is going to be okay. Lorraine says nothing will be okay because she's a jinx. She brings up an ornament that she bought that caused a fire. We don't get any more information on that.
She just gives us this whole, like, very comical overview of all these mishaps they had while they were together.
A California trip where his his luggage was sent to Iran, a ski trip where she ended up crashing into him and breaking both of his legs, so on and so forth.
And Sam's probably getting the idea that, you know what, maybe it is a good idea to stay away from this chick.
I would certainly think so.
So she goes to call Carl.
And you know what? After a while, I got tired of these scenes with Lorraine talking to Carl because they are all the same.
Yeah. Well, the point is each time they go to a new location, she's telling Carl exactly where they are.
Which is a point that could have been made without even seeing the conversation, honestly.
Yeah. And, you know, I was thinking about it while watching this because I don't remember, like, the first time I saw this episode. You know, I don't remember watching it without knowing the twist.
Right.
So I'm thinking, like, is there somebody watching this for the first time, and maybe somebody in the comments can tell us if they have any memory of their first time watching this episode. Like, was it a twist? Or was this totally blatantly obvious what's happening? Because watching it, you know, for the however many time I've seen this, it's beyond blatantly obvious that she's constantly telling him the location.
Right.
Was it too obvious, I guess is my question.
The episode would benefit from not showing the conversation. Just make a reference to her going to talk to Carl. Right. And then at the end of the episode, be like, oh, this is how you knew. Right. Like, and not have it be so obvious. But then again, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if the twist is obvious to someone who hasn't watched the episode 100 times. Right. But, yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I definitely think that these scenes are, like, beyond being obvious, they're also kind of annoying. Yeah. Because it's the same thing every single time. This whole
episode is like that, though. It's just constant repetition of she spilled something, she thinks she's unlucky, you're going to die again, the killer caught up with you. Right. Where are we going to hide next? I don't know. I don't feel like there's enough substance to justify this being a 40-something minute episode of television.
Which is why I think we get the multiple scenes of Sam and Lorraine singing, because they really didn't have enough
of anything else going on.
Yeah, they didn't have enough to... So it almost kind of feels like that's padding to the episode. As enjoyable as it is to watch, it feels like those scenes are there specifically to pad out the episode for a thin story.
Yeah. So Al comes back and says now they're going to die in 8 minutes before the sheriff gets here. He's due in 10. And so they flee. They got to get into the car and they start driving. And, you know, this would have been a great opportunity, I think, for something to add to this story. Al should tell us where to go hide because we're in New Mexico. Right. We started in Tularosa, New Mexico, and they're headed, I forget where. But they're not far from where Project Quantum Leap takes place. Sam and Al know this area. And Sam, you know, might be Swiss cheese and not remember, but this, I feel like should be where Al's like, oh, well, there's this, you know, this great little hideaway over 2 towns that way. Right. Like, I feel like this is the moment we should have got something from Al acknowledging, hey, we're in the hills of New Mexico here. Like, you can see them, but we never get any reference to this is their hometown. This is where they live.
They should... I mean, Al should pretty much
know.
Not
hometown, but I mean, I think they're within an hour or so of where the project is.
I think, you know, Al would actually know this area, you know, being in New Mexico.
Yeah, and also this is, you know, 1985. It's not that long ago. Not that much has changed. We're airing in 91? So it's
91.
6 years in real life, and they're in, 98 now-ish?
Something like that. Yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, so, yeah, you have a solid point there. They talk for a while. They reconnect. Isn't it romantic? A tire ends up blowing out, and they make it to a mechanic driving on a rim, which means, technically speaking, Sam also needs a rim in addition to a tire.
Yeah, well, the mechanic tells him, he says, you need to, you know, he said, I'll patch this until you can get a new tire, because you don't, or a new wheel. Right. You don't just need a tire, you need a whole new wheel. Right. And he's like, I don't got time for that. Just fix it. Right. Like, right now. We got to go.
And the mechanic's like, oh, that'll be $80. And Sam's like, $80? And he's reacting like it's his money. Right. Like, Sam, it's not your money, so why do you care this much?
Right. Do you have the money in your pocket or not? Right. But before, the conversation they were having, which is, you know, it does come up again, is they were talking about this dream of going to Hawaii. And, let's get back together and we'll go to Hawaii and we'll settle down and we'll play in clubs in Hawaii. And they were having this bonding moment talking about like this dream life they never got to live. And Sam was actually connecting to this too, because he was like, yeah, I'd love to get off the road and just call someplace home. Like, he's talking from his own heart here. He's tired of traveling through time.
He makes a reference to wanting to be home. Yeah. And that's a poignant moment. Poignant moment.
I think that's the word you're looking for.
Okay, probably.
But yeah, so at the gas station, Sam's helping the mechanic with the tire, and Lorraine, of course, goes to call Carl again.
Right, and we have another of these repetitive scenes. But this time he's insisting that he has Sam bring her to an airport.
Right, he's like, there's an airport 2 miles away. Go there, I'll meet you there. Because he's a pilot. I don't think we mentioned that. Every time we've seen him, he's been like at an airport. He's flying in some like show, right? He's like a stunt pilot or something. Or something. He's flying.
It was some kind of race or something.
He's flying like, these little prop planes. So he's going to get in his plane and he's just going to go to this airport and meet them. And we never really found out exactly where is he, how far away is he.
Right.
I imagine we're not too far away because Lorraine drove her car that she's always running out of gas with.
You would think that the host would have driven further away from this area so that it wouldn't be quite so easy to be found.
Well, no, where they were from 3 years ago was Chicago. So they are pretty far away.
Okay.
I was not sure where Lorraine and Chuck are based at before, this day.
Okay. Al says that even hiding in the mountains, they're going to die. And Sam suggests, well, if we can't run, then we should face him. And Al says that he only gives them a 3% chance of winning a direct confrontation. And at this point, I'm thinking, okay, well, what are you suggesting then? If you can't run and you can't confront him, what do you do? What are you suggesting?
Right.
But Al says he needs to get rid of Lorraine to save her life.
Yeah, so she comes back and tells Sam how, oh my gosh, what's his name? Carl. Yeah. How Carl wants him to take her to the airport. And Al's like, that's perfect. Let's bring her to the airport and get rid of her. Wouldn't a good solution have been for both of them to freaking go to the airport and just get out of Dodge?
Right. you would figure that Sam not knowing that who Carl is, that might be a possible solution.
But he's like, no, that's a good idea. We're going to bring her to the airport. And she's like, I don't want to leave you. So I'll tell Sam, well, you got to cut her loose. So he tells her, like, hey, I'm not interested. We're over, which is a complete 180 from this whole Hawaii conversation they just had, right? And he's basically trying to break her heart to make her want to leave, so that he can stay and get killed by himself.
Yeah, I don't get that. Like, isn't he the main target?
Right, he's the main target. Right. I mean, she's... sure, saving her in the process would be good, but your goal here is to save your host.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's the one that witnessed the killing. Lorraine can still get out of the situation just by getting away from him.
Yeah, as far as they know, the only reason she's involved is because she happened to be around him today.
Right. So she gets upset. She drives away in her car, and then, Al seems to think that they won something.
Oh, we also, during that conversation, learned that, her last 3 boyfriends all died of really weird deaths. And for a minute, I'm like, are they suggesting she's somehow the reason he died?
Right.
Beyond the fact that she's a jinx. I don't know, it was really weird. It kind of caught me off guard. They're like, oh, this one fell in an alligator pit, and I don't remember the other 2, but... Yeah,
one was a photographer accident where you didn't notice he was stepping into an alligator pit. The other was, him falling off Dodgers Stadium trying to catch a baseball, and I forget what the other one is, but yeah.
Yeah, and were these before Joey, or were these during the 3 years that she's trying to get over him? Did she, lose...
We don't get an indication.
3 boyfriends.
We don't get an indication of the time. I made the assumption that it was before Joey, but we don't get any idea when these events happened.
And I think they're trying to push the point home, oh, she's a jinx. Everyone that's around her dies.
Right, but this is where it gets really, really goofy.
It was weird. Yeah. Maybe you should have mentioned this earlier, right? Or spread it out more throughout the conversations.
It's not very natural. I can see why Ed Scarlett didn't really write for the show again, and he didn't really have much of a career after this either. He basically went on to write a bunch of animated stuff. Scooby-Doo episodes.
So she left, and the problem is, instead of the killer coming for Sam, and I don't know what his plan was to face him, the killer just keeps driving, right? The
Right,
killer follows Lorraine, and Sam's just standing there like, oh no, that wasn't supposed to happen.
Right. So we see Lorraine. So we find out that, backing up a little bit. I skipped way down to somewhere down at the bottom of my notes. All right, so she gets away. She still gets killed. Sam steals the mechanic's truck.
And a gun.
And he's driving through smoke, fog. I don't really understand what's going on here because we didn't see this before.
So this is one of those chase scenes where I couldn't tell you what happened because I can't follow along.
Lorraine almost gets hit by a truck again. In fact, all three of them, Sam, the killer, and Lorraine, almost get hit by this truck.
Right. There's this
I don't know
dangerous truck on the road.
Right.
The real menace here.
Right. They all drive around. Sam catches up to the killer and eventually manages to get the killer to get hit by another truck.
Yeah, so he gets in front of him, and the killer's trying to cut Sam off, and then gets, like, total head-on collision with this semi-truck. And the killer, who Sam and Al think is Nikki. Yeah, they're saying that's Nikki. That's the guy who killed Ponty. He's the one trying to kill you. We're convinced that's who this person is Nikki, that we, for some reason, know about.
We find out that Joey doesn't die. The truck driver is fine. But Lorraine still dies. Why?
Okay, so so telling us that the truck driver lived, that in itself was like, that's weird. Right. That was a heck of an accident.
We have a heck of a body count already.
Why is the truck driver living? Like, did they feel like they already pushed the limits by having Sam, Sam already caused 2 deaths in this episode.
Right.
People that weren't supposed to die in the original history, that being the bartender and that brunette chick.
But fuck those guys, am I right?
But they're making a point to tell us he didn't get this truck driver killed. He's okay.
But so Lorraine still dies, and
Lorraine
I don't
still
understand
dies.
Why.
They don't know why. We
I don't understand
know
why Nikki doesn't continue to try to go after Sam and eventually get him. Like, it's I don't know. He found him the first time. Why isn't he going to find him again?
Right. Eventually, he would have got him.
And what would be the point of revealing yourself and then killing Lorraine? What's the point of that?
Right. Exactly. There's a lot of plot holes here.
Right.
But the biggest problem I have in this moment is Nikki's dead. Nikki died. But that's not Nikki.
Right.
And how at this moment did you not find out that that's not Nikki? The killer is not Nikki. Like the person that's been chasing you that we're calling the killer.
Right.
He's credited just as the killer. He doesn't have a name, this character.
He doesn't need a name.
He's he works for Nikki.
Evil mobster guy.
But listen. Should it, when Al's looking it up, been like, oh, wait, that wasn't Nikki. That was Bobby so-and-so.
Right.
He works for Nikki. Like, shouldn't there be record that this person that died in the car crash, that you're looking up the car crash,
right?
You know that the driver's okay. Like, why do you not know that that's not Nikki right now?
Right.
Because you're reading about this event, this crash that just happened.
Yeah, so I guess you're right. There is some weirdness to talk about in this episode. I thought it was just like, nothing really to discuss here. But yeah, that's another point.
I feel like it's just a really weak episode for Ziggy.
Yeah.
And not in the general way where Ziggy's wrong. It's just like I said before, simultaneously knowing too much and not knowing enough, where it doesn't make sense where this information is coming from. What are you looking at that's telling you Nikki just died? Because we know that's not Nikki.
Right.
Yeah, in the same sentence, you know that the driver's okay.
Right. I mean, maybe Al took readings from the hand link to determine that his life signs was still good.
No, it's not Star Trek. It's not a phaser. It's...
Well, you shoot people with phasers.
Whatever.
It would be like a tricorder.
There you go.
What you're talking about. All right. So Lorraine goes and meets Carl at the airport, but Carl really wants to know where Sam is.
Yeah, he's very concerned with why isn't Joey here? Where's Joey?
He's completely giving up his cover at this point. Sam and Al try to find out where Lorraine is, and Ziggy can't center in on her because of technical reasons.
Yeah, I lost myself in my notes, but that was another thing, like, what?
I guess there's, when she's part of the percentage of population.
She's missing a synapses connection in her brain. And that's why he can't center on her.
What exactly does that mean?
I don't know. Does that mean something? So yeah, neither Gushy nor Ziggy can tell Al how to get to the airport.
Right. I mean,
so Sam said, which way to the airport? Because as far as he knows, she's going to the airport. And Al's like, we don't know.
You don't know? I mean, there can't be that many airports in New Mexico.
It's
in this
2 miles
location.
away.
Right.
The question was, how do I get to the airport? And he didn't say, we don't know if you should go to the airport. He was like, we don't know how to get to the airport.
Right.
Which was weird. But we quickly left that thought, and we did switch over to, well, her body's found in the desert somewhere between this town and that town.
Right.
Okay, so maybe you should drive there?
Right.
And basically, it's just this really weird scene of Al saying, we don't know where to go. Okay, well, figure it out.
Right. You know, be helpful, be good at your job for a change.
So they say they don't know how Lorraine died. They don't know where she died.
But
they know the exact moment she died because they have 7 minutes and something seconds until she dies.
Al also mentions a bullet hole in her head.
Yeah. So
that would be an indication that she was shot in the head. So they know how she died.
You know too much and you know not enough at the same time. You cannot possibly know the exact second she dies without having a clue how or where that happens.
Yes. So, all right. Sam ends up, like, driving down a random direction and says, instincts. I'm going by my guts.
Yeah, so there's a fork in the road. Ziggy says to take a left, and Sam goes right. And you know what? I don't blame him for not listening to Ziggy.
Yeah, these people have been terrible at their job all episode long. And you could make the argument all series long. Yeah.
Yeah, really digging into these episodes, it makes me really... Ziggy's not that helpful.
Right.
Like, I kind of had this idea that, Ziggy's this great, helpful resource, but is she?
Right.
And we learned in the new series, turning her off doesn't do any problem, so...
Maybe we just find out that Ziggy has been completely useless all along.
Yeah.
New series and old.
Sorry, Ziggy. Sorry, Deborah Pratt. We still want you back, though. We want to hear Ziggy some more.
Right.
But she's not all that helpful.
No. So Lorraine continues to get interrogated, and Sam turns up with a shotgun to reveal that this is Nikki.
Okay, so yeah, another point where I'm like, how did we jump here?
Right.
How did Sam jump here?
Mm-hmm.
So he makes it to the airport, but he instantly knows, oh, well, that guy who, as far as we know, is Carl, is actually Nikki.
Mm-hmm.
How did Sam make that connection?
I don't know.
Like, I can see him possibly thinking it, but he was like, that's Nikki.
Maybe he just took a wild guess and it was confirmed.
It was weird that the last scene we saw him was, we don't even know where we're driving to. Right. And now suddenly, oh, that's Nikki and he's using you. Which is obvious, like I said, as a repeat viewer. Like, the whole thing seems blatantly obvious that Nikki was the one telling the killer where to go.
Yeah.
Right? But this just seemed really weird to me, again. And Lorraine's very confused. She's still not getting it. And Nikki, sees Joey and is like, hey, Joey. So it makes sense to him that he would know.
Right.
But how does Sam and Al know?
Yeah, I don't know. I just assume that Sam...
Because they were convinced Nikki died in the car crash.
Right. I think that Sam saw the situation and then just took a wild guess that this was actually Nikki and put two and two together.
It would have made more sense to me if he questioningly said, Nikki?
Right.
Instead of like, yeah, we know each other. We go way back.
Right. I think maybe Sam was just kind of putting on an act of sorts, and he took a wild stab, and he turned out to be right. So Lorraine gets pissed, tries to attack Nikki, and Nikki gets the upper hand. He's got his arms around her neck. Sam puts down the shotgun and the other gun, and Al says, oh, get ready to run. Nikki lets go of Lorraine, tries to shoot Sam. Lorraine ends up pulling a cord, and Nikki gets crushed by an engine.
Yeah, it was like this giant chain. She just pulls on it, and this airplane engine's held up in the air by this chain.
It seems really
Yeah, my question is why? Why is this engine just sitting there? Nobody's around, by the way. Like, we're at an airport. Nikki just flew into here.
Right.
Where's the people that belong in this hangar?
Maybe it's like Nikki's airport and it's nobody else's.
I mean, he just flew in there, though, because it was 2 miles away.
Right.
There should be somebody around.
Right, I guess.
Who's working on this engine that they just left? And it's so easy to knock it down by just pulling on the chain.
Right. that seems really, really dangerous.
Really, really dangerous and unsafe and unsecure and weird.
Pointless. Like, why would you do that?
But the airplane engine falls on him and he goes splat. So now both the bad guys are dead.
Yep. And we find out that Joey and Nikki get married. They're still performing to this day in Hawaii. And they awkwardly kiss, after getting, like, his injury, I guess, re-injured by...
yeah, so he was shot, remember? So he's got, like, this bullet wound on his leg.
And Lorraine accidentally, like, kicks it or something, and then they end up kissing, and Sam leaves, and that's the end of the episode.
I had told you last week, when we were talking about this off air, that I was it was in my brain thinking about this scene with the engine falling, and I was like, am I remembering that right? Is that this episode? Because then I was also thinking of the movie Twins.
Right.
Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito. And in my brain, the same thing happened in that movie, and I was really confused about it. So I went and looked that up as well, because I was trying to say, like, did my brain as a child somehow merge these stories together? And something very similar did happen in Twins.
Now, when was Twins?
I didn't write that down, but it had to have been before this. It was like 80s, like 88 or 89, I would guess.
Sounds about right. I was thinking like early 90s.
I mean, it's comparable to this time, but I think Twins was first. I could be wrong. I didn't actually look that up. But so something similar happened. It wasn't an engine, though.
Okay.
It was literally just a mountain of chains.
Ah,
but it was the same chain.
I think I vaguely remember that now.
It was the same, like, thick chain as this that Lorraine pulled on, where in that movie, somebody, they pulled on the chain, and this whole, like, spool of this giant chain fell in and killed the bad guy.
Ah, okay.
So it was very similar, but it didn't involve an airplane engine.
So is that a homage?
It stuck in my brain that these were somehow linked. So they were similar enough that, it had that impact on me as, having seen them both as a child. So yeah, that was interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. I have a couple notes here from Al's Place. We already talked about Disco Inferno. The other note that I got from alsplace.com was that the car chase footage that was seen during this episode was actually from, Donald Bellisario's film Last Rites.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
So a lot of the footage was reused
from his movie.
Yeah,
interesting. Well, that's an interesting trivia note.
Yeah.
So yeah, anything else to say about this episode?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, too much car chases and.
I'm really surprised that we even got to this point. Like, we managed to make a 50-something minute episode out of this. I'm surprised by that.
Yeah, but I think most of it was me just saying it doesn't make sense.
Well, I mean, that's good enough in itself, because I just thought this was something that wasn't going to be able to generate a lot of commentary. So we got, like, basically an average episode here.
Yeah.
Next week, we will be doing Season 3 of Trivia, barring something bad happening. We'll keep Lorraine away from us, so, she won't cause a jinx on us. We'll also talk about Southern Comfort, I think, is the next episode.
Yeah.
That's another Tommy Thompson episode.
Which, feels funny that episode is coming so soon after Private Dancer.
Yes.
Because it's taking a very opposite stance, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like there's going to be some fun comparisons to make when we talk about that.
It's funny because I hated that episode as a kid, and I've watched it since then, and I've reconsidered it. I like it more than I used to as a kid. I think I didn't like the one of the older horrors, for lack of a better term, in that episode. I just didn't really like her as a kid. But seeing it as an older person, I got more of appreciation for her character. I think that's a fun episode. And then, like I said, it's Tommy Thompson.
Yeah,
so.
It's an all right episode, but just, because we just last week talked about Private Dancer, I feel like, these episodes were actually really close together in airing. And like I said, the message is complete opposite. Right? In Private Dancer, the whole point is like,
don't become a stripper.
Don't become a stripper, because then you'll be a prostitute and die from AIDS. Bad. Right?
Yeah.
Sex trade is bad. And now we're going to be like, yay, we're in a whorehouse, it's fun.
Well, yeah, I guess that's the difference between the writers, I guess, because Paul Brown wrote Private Dancer, and Tommy Thompson maybe has different attitudes towards it in Southern Comfort.
I do have to say, in Southern Comfort, Al is more like himself.
Yes.
That you'd expect him to be in this situation.
I definitely remember that.
Yeah, so I'm sure we'll have lots to talk about with that next time.
All right. We would like to hear from you. Did you like the podcast? What did you think of the episode? Stacie can be reached at...
I can be reached on Twitter X, Instagram, Threads, at TVN Coupon Talk.
See, you're simple. You just have the same thing for everything.
Well, when I set up, I just recently joined Instagram, and the reason I kept that was just for the simplicity, even though, honestly, I don't even talk about coupons anymore.
No?
It's really, it's where I tweet about TV.
Gotcha,
and we're not even allowed to say tweet anymore, but whatever.
Yeah, I don't care. As far as supporting the channel, you can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. And yes, I'm calling it Twitter and not X. I'm refusing to do that. I don't care what he says. And you can join one of my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle, which has a bunch of new cool products that Stacie created. And you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to our channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions, signing off.